can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
I'm about to interview a serious criminal. We've had to have security outside the studio here, or the warehouse, in case there's an armed incursion. I don't know, but there's cars and armoured trucks and everything, so we're just going to do this with our heart in our mouth and hope everything goes okay. Now, first of all, I must admit, and this is how well I'm going these days, I was given a book by a friend of this person I'm about to introduce, and I lost it. And because I would always do the courtesy of the people we speak to of reading a book if it was written and given to me before I have a chat to them. I said to my associate here, Sue Stanley OAM, I said, can you believe I've lost the book? I found it under the seat of my car last night. And I thought, that's how well I'm going. So I'm apologising in advance that I haven't read the book. I just flicked through the first couple of pages and underlined some things. But I have with me Richard Wollstonecroft,
yes,
who we call Dick the Muff Man, but we'll call him Richard Wollstonecroft for the sake of this. So I'm going to introduce this is a political prisoner, and she's written a book called Cell 22, and her name is Monica Smit. And welcome, Monica.
Thank you so much.
Just let me finish this ham-fisted introduction. I do apologise that I lost the book, but I will read it, of course.
I've read it, Sam. So
no, that's why you're here, Dick.
I thought it was Richard.
This woman here sitting opposite me, the cat's mother, Monica, she was jailed as an anti-lockdown protester during the corrupt, this is my words, during the corrupt and dishonest Andrews regime in Victoria, not just because of, it wasn't just corrupt because Monica was jailed, but despite the COVID saga, everything else that went on in the dishonest and corrupt Victorian government under Mr Andrews. She raised, have a listen to this, she raised $90,000 for the freedom movement, and I think a crowdsourcing, she raised $250,000 was raised for crowdsourcing. So what happened was when the government found out that they didn't have really a case after incarcerating her, they dropped all that, I think. We'll clear that up. They dropped all that and charged her with a different crime, collecting money under false pretences because they didn't register as a whatever. So never try and dud the government, or else they'll find about 8 different ways to get at you. Ask Ian Cook from I Cook Foods that. So there's the most ham-fisted introduction I can give to Monica. It says in the front of her book, which I liked, it says in the front of her book, compliments to the Victoria Police and dictator Dan Andrews for this great story. So Monica, welcome to You Cannot Be Serious, and as I say, you're a serious criminal put in jail for maybe, they said, inciting a march or inciting a protest about the COVID saga. How am I going?
You're going really well. There's a few discrepancies there.
Correct them, please.
The charges that are being laid right now is from Consumer Affairs, and it is simply for not registering a fundraiser.
Yep.
There is no questions about, fraudulency or anything like that, and that's all it is. And the figure that they have is $86,000. But yes, I was charged with 2 counts of inciting people to break COVID restrictions. Now, the interesting thing to understand here is that breaking COVID restrictions, even in that time, the punishment was a fine. So it's kind of like, Sam, I am inciting you to park in a no parking zone. You get a parking ticket and I get a criminal charge for it. It was a loophole in the criminal system, and my crime was that I found loopholes within the restrictions. So I guess we're even there. But they actually didn't drop the charges straight away. After I got out of, by the way, I went to prison because I wouldn't sign the bail conditions. It had nothing to do with the incitement charges. Basically, the bail conditions, I couldn't even speak against the government at the time. That was literally the words. I couldn't speak against the COVID restrictions at all in any capacity, even in my home. And at the time, I had a website that was getting 50 to 100,000 views a day or a week, depending on the situation. Clearly, people needed it, you know. And it was 3 weeks before mandates and all that sort of stuff, and they wanted to shut me up, so I had to go to prison to not sign those bail conditions. We appealed the bail conditions, and we won, and I got out and I was able to continue to do whatever work I wanted to do.
It's fair to say you were, for a while, a political prisoner in this country.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is kind of unusual. Australia doesn't have a whole bunch of
Well, I
political...
was just going to say, it is extraordinary that we're listening to this in this country, in this state. This is honestly, this is stuff. I know it's a loosely termed phrase of a third world country. This is extraordinary that we're even having this conversation about what went on in this state by the most corrupt and dishonest state government probably in the history of the world.
It's such an amazing country, Australia. So yeah, it does feel kind of like a chapter of my life that almost didn't exist. Maybe you feel like that too.
So,
like,
Monica,
you know.
don't let me make this about me, but you would probably know I was visited by the police
Congratulations.
on this podcast here. I said during the COVID lockdown, the ridiculous restrictions about only two people could walk together, but not three. You couldn't go 5 kilometres. Oh, yeah,
Bubble buddies.
You couldn't go and buy anything unless you were on your own. And I said, if ever anyone was going to march about a protest, I reckon 250,000 people would walk up Burke Street to the town hall. Well, I had the police visit me the next day and saying, which I put online, they said, I'm not blaming the police necessarily. I'm not blaming the police. They said, we're here, are you organising a march? I said, no. I said, I'm not. If I had been organising a march on the podcast, I would have said where it was, when it was, what route we were taking, what we were protesting about, and we'd have some speakers. I just said, if ever Victorians were going to protest about anything and march to Parliament House, this would be the day that you do it over this. So I was visited by the coppers as well.
You nearly joined Monica in jail maybe there, Sam, for a second.
Nowadays, men and women can be in the same jail.
So it is absolutely extraordinary. I notice someone said in the foreword to your book by Topher Field, he said in the foreword, she has no idea what she's getting herself into. I would suggest that you probably didn't. Maybe you did realise what you're getting yourself into, but never mess with the government. They will round the troops up and go bang with the big stick because they don't like to be embarrassed.
I think it was a blessing that I was naive because I just wouldn't have done it otherwise. So it all happened very quickly. My Reignite Democracy Australia, the things that led me to being attacked happened all very organically and naturally because it was just the right time. So I started that organisation, Reignite Democracy Australia, in August 2020. And that was when anyone who was going to sort of, we say wake up quickly, anyone who was going to wake up was already awake at that point. It was winter in Victoria, we were locked down, and I just put together this organisation and I hosted a live stream protest. And I said to the people that were commenting, I'll take all your comments and I'll put them into like a pie graph or a diagram, and I'll send it to members of parliament so that they know how people are really feeling. Now, I didn't want to upset anyone, so I didn't do an actual protest. I did a live stream protest. That protest had so many views. I've never had a video with that many views, and no one knew who I was or what Reignite Democracy Australia was. So it was just like the right timing, you know what I mean? And then I put all this data together, and I honestly, naively thought that members of parliament would be grateful for my service. Like, here's this constituent taking it off their own back to create this situation so that we can know how the people really feel. And they never liked me, Sam. I don't understand why. I was doing them a favour, like. And that's my naivety, and it took me a long time to recognise that some human beings are not in it for the people but actually in it for someone else or for themselves. And that was hard for me to learn as a kind of a sheltered person being brought up, you know,
and,
like so.
And the gravitas, if you like, of it is exemplified, if you like, by the fact in light of all the misinformation that's gone on about COVID that's since been found out overseas by doctors who are like you, were against whatever the government said they were on about wearing masks and having vaccinations, and in light of the nonsense that's gone on about it, it makes it all the more pathetic that this government led the world in falling over itself. I see the Health Minister, Brett Sutton, has received an OAM. Could you believe? Could you believe?
No, I can't.
Brett Sutton, who saw I Cook Foods out of business, oversaw that, the demise of a private enterprise chef's organisation, food provider. He saw him out of business. It is extraordinary just what goes on, and we become ambivalent. We just become, until something like this comes up, we think, oh no, someone's got to take hold of their country and
I always
get it
thought
back.
it was incredibly strange that the idea of locking down, like basically shutting down all business, shutting down all commerce, like what are the effects of that? They would vastly outweigh the effects of whatever this disease was going to do. And I thought, no one seems to be thinking of this.
That's what we were saying.
Yeah.
That's what. By the way, I never organised a protest, but I did incite people to break COVID restrictions, and I'll say that with total honour. But
guilty as charged.
That's exactly what we were saying. We were saying if you want to stay in your house, stay in your house. No one's going to stop you from doing that. But there are people who are hurting and they want to feel heard, so they have a right to protest. If you want to protect yourself, you can do that. You can close your door. You can get your online delivery. No one's going to judge you for it. I'm not going to judge anyone for that. But we didn't interfere with their choices, but they wanted to interfere with our choices. And that wasn't fair. And the things that we said, to be honest, we've been more or less vindicated. And remember, when I went to prison, there was no vaccines, okay? So you got to think of the timing. The only thing I was protesting was lockdowns and over control and overreach of the government, these steel boundaries, around the city and things like that. That's what I was protesting. And to this day, we've been completely vindicated.
Now, once again, Monica, I don't want to counter your situation with things I've done, but
Please do.
About the same time you did it, I got my golf bag and golf clubs and went and
that was
stood
great.
on the steps of Parliament House
How'd that
after
go?
Dan Andrews said, you can't play golf. And I said,
I wish I had known about that. That's
God's
amazing.
name, I posted it. I said, in God's name, why can't you play golf? You play on your own. You don't. The rules of golf are that you keep away from people. You're out in the open air. And he said, no, if it saves one life, it's worth it that you shouldn't play golf.
Golf saves lives.
And I went and stood on the steps of Parliament House, and
that was
with
crazy.
The police standing around looking at me and saying, "Good on you."
I remember thinking, is Sam Newman in the freedom movement? I think he's joined it.
He's definitely an honorary member, I reckon.
So it was extraordinary, the nonsense, and. You said, and everyone said, well, you couldn't go out and buy things unless you couldn't walk out with more than two people. At the same time, they were letting council workers and people who work for the government go and mow the nature strips. People like Jim's mowing, people who work for him weren't allowed to go and mow people's lawns, but the council were allowed to go out and do their normal job, garbage. Everyone was allowed to go out except...
Brothels. It's the most intimate role in the workforce, and they were allowed to do
Fiona
it.
Patton got that. She was that corrupt.
Sorry.
It
was ludicrous.
So I haven't read the book, but I flicked through the first few pages, and at how you were arrested. This honestly, you'd think you're in Russia. I'll just read the first couple of lines. He said, "This is how you became a political prisoner." You'd just done an interview with Professor Ian Brighthope that you thought was a very good interview, and you were driving home, and in your rear view mirror, you noticed an undercover cop flashing his red and blue lights, signaling for me to pull over. I didn't see at the time, but two more unmarked cop cars veered in behind the first. They got out, and after a random check, he informed me that I was under arrest for incitement. So people followed you in your car, they pulled you over, and they said you're under arrest for incitement, following you in your car. It is you couldn't make this stuff up, although. I know you could make a film. Someone will probably make a film about this, Monica. You must have thought, what in God's name's going on when the coppers pulled you over? Well, not blaming the coppers necessarily.
Yeah, no, I got to be honest. There was a few things going through my head. The first thing was I was outside my 5 kilometre radius, although I was working. So I thought it would just be a conversation like, yeah, I'm outside my 5 kilometre. But luckily I put on my live stream just in case. But also, Sam, it's weird. I had a dream 3 days earlier of exactly that happening. I got arrested, I got given bad bail conditions, and I went to prison because I didn't sign them. So it's really weird, but I think God prepared me for it. And so when it happened, I was really calm and I was like, oh, okay, the dream was real. Crap, here we go. So I was really calm. And to be honest, other people had been arrested for incitement about a year earlier, Fanos and so forth. They were given bad bail conditions, they signed them, and they were kind of more or less shut up. So it wasn't completely outside the realm of possibility, to be honest. So I wasn't
the government
in total
was
shock.
shutting people up by giving them bad bail conditions.
Yes.
So in other words, one of the things, if you did breach one of the ridiculous laws, which were ridiculous, they were like something under the, as Sam said before, something out of the Soviet Union. You can't. What difference would it make if you went 10 kilometres or 5 kilometres from your home? I mean, to exercise or whatever, or that you're only allowed out for 1 hour a day. Things like this. I remember when these rules came, I said, what the hell is this? I mean, there were people in Soviet Russia who were freer than us at that time. Anyway, not that Soviet Russia's around anymore. But, it was just insane. And I didn't realise they were shutting people up, though, but they were. And that's what you were fighting about when you went to jail, correct?
So I knew exactly what happened, Sam, is the year prior to that, I was finding loopholes within the restrictions. So, for example, if you were allowed 5 kilometres from your house, but you're only allowed to exercise and you don't have to wear a mask if you're eating, I would tell people to put on their runners, go to their local members of parliament office with their lunch, and in between bites to give the members of parliament. So I would just find these loopholes. I would promote protests and I would say, I am going to report on this protest because I was. So I found these loopholes, and then one day, I don't know what happened, but I just got sick of playing the game, and I promoted a extension of a lockdown protest at Flinders Street, and I just said, I am going and so should you. And like clockwork, I think I was hunted down in about 5 days after that.
Well, the government said, this is their definition, it says, a person who urges the commission of an offence is guilty of the offence of incitement. That's the legal definition of the crime you were being arrested for.
And it was so bad, they dropped them. So bad.
Yeah.
I'm such a danger to society that they just decided to drop them when it all became a little bit too hard.
So I don't want to link you to this man because you probably don't like him, but it doesn't matter. The principle's the same. This is what they're doing to Donald Trump over in America. They have charged him with 8,000 things, hoping one of them will stick. None of them have ever been laid on anyone else in the history of the American democracy, but they just hope that one day, because he's a threat, something will stick and he won't be able to run for office.
And it's a distraction, and of course the use of resources and mental capacity. It's all part of it.
It's intimidation.
Yeah.
So it says here, you say this was a blatant intimidation act. What they were doing. It says here. The real shame is because I remember trusting the police. You got into the stage where even though police were acting on the instructions, I presume, of the government, you started to mistrust the police, did you, over just things they were saying to you or doing?
Getting arrested.
Some members of the police.
Getting arrested. I've had fantastic situations with the police, by the way, and I agree with you. It's not the police fault, but the fact that they're capable of following such bad laws and bad instructions, that does fear me a lot. And I've been at so many protests. I've seen people being shot with rubber bullets. I've seen, I've been tear gassed. I've been all of these things. I've seen old women being pushed over and things like that. So it is hard to get that out of your psyche. Now, when I was arrested and put in prison, the worst part about the whole situation was being strip searched and asked to open my private bits. And they knew that I wasn't a drug mule. Yeah. They knew why I was there. So they did it just... Now, I'll tell you, and I'm telling you that because... One, that was my worst part of it. But two, I can forgive those cops. I can forgive all of them. You know what I mean? But what it takes is some sort of accountability, though, first. It's like someone can't grow and learn from their mistakes if they don't take any accountability at all. So I will definitely forgive them. Actually, I forgive them now, to be honest. I don't hold grudges. But someone needs to apologise at some point. And of course, I'm going to be going after that apology.
Don't hold your breath waiting for the former Andrews, or not the former Andrews government to apologise for anything. They just ploughed on, a belligerent, arrogant, pompous, and having no regard for the people that they govern over at all.
The ironic thing is he can't play golf anymore. You know how you couldn't play golf during lockdowns? Now Daniel Andrews can't get that golf membership, remember?
I think that's why they won't let him play, because he wouldn't let anyone else play.
So the book, Cell 22, is a As I say, I haven't read it, unfortunately, because I lost it. There's 200 and there's a whole lot of chapters that specifically identify all the areas that you had to overcome and went through, and all the legal ramifications of everything. It's you must have thought, why am I doing this? You would have had bipartisan support from people in the community, I'd suggest, but have you got the haters terrorising you?
Oh, well, of course. And when you put your face out there, it doesn't matter what you're fighting for, you're always going to have people on both sides, you know. But I learnt earlier on, and I'm sure you have too, is that haters just want your energy and attention. So the best thing to do is ignore them. And there's a lot more good people out there that support me than there are haters. So it's fine.
I was trying to remember someone said this. Never worry about the haters. They're only angry that the truth you speak contradicts the lies they live.
That's it.
I heard you say that in another podcast, yes.
Yes, I'm staggered I can remember it. Someone said, not me, I plagiarised that, I'm happy to say that. So where are we? I think you are currently before the courts as we speak. Was something announced yesterday, was it, or as early as yesterday?
Wasn't quite yesterday,
week.
It was very recently,
Yep.
but I was charged about 3 months ago, but we've just got a trial date.
Yesterday?
We just got a trial date set
see.
last week, so for April
last
29th.
week.
Yes, you are right.
And this is for the funding thing, is it, or not?
Yeah, so this is, when I was in prison, my team at RDA, I had 8 staff at the time, they put together a fundraiser for my legal costs, and I'm being sued for not registering said fundraiser. Even though I was in solitary confinement, I couldn't even get a pen, but how am I going to get these papers to register a fundraiser?
Sounds like what they did to Pauline Hanson at one stage. You remember that? She was another political prisoner at one stage.
Yes.
They accused her of falsely registering her party, and then she was in. I remember when she was in jail.
Yep.
All of Australia
11
got
days she went to
11
jail.
days. Australia was very angry, myself included, when that happened. So
it's good though, because it does showcase what they're willing to do, and actually it inspires people. So it was really good that she did that.
It does blow up in their face, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I had 22 days in solitary confinement to finish my book. So the joke's on them. They gave me a better story. Originally, I started the book and I was talking about October 31st, 2020. I got arrested 3 times in one day. I got put in a divvy van for 45 minutes and not charged. And I thought that was a good story, Sam. So I started writing the book, and there's a bit of my personal stuff in there as well. And then when I got put in prison, I was like, the book just got better. And I've got the time to write it, so I had to write it by hand.
Did you?
That's my silver lining on things. I don't take things too seriously. So, but what was I talking about?
No, was that just at the start? Start, I said you raised $90,000. Is that? You just said then is that what they charge you for, not registering, like a GoFundMe
Not
thing?
registering. So you're supposed to register 2 weeks before you do a fundraiser. Like I knew I was going to get hunted down and arrested, of course.
Yeah.
I didn't even do the fundraiser, my team did. And so basically what I think is happening is when you look at a news article and you see fundraiser, someone's name and being sued, the first thing you're going to think is that they've done something fraudulent, right? You're not going to read it properly and see that it's literally just a piece of paper that I had to fill out. So I can't believe it's going all the way, to be honest, Sam. I'm not worried at all about the case itself. I'm going to go all the way and see what happens. But every time they do something like this, I sell more books, I get more publicity. So you know what? Bring it on. It's fine.
So do you think
It's fun.
the end they will find a way to back down from all of this? But that'll be the only drawback to anything that you're trying to achieve, is that they will try and save face they'll end up accusing you of jaywalking just to say they've got you on something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's because I have 2 cases where I'm the plaintiff coming up as well, Sam. So July, I'm suing them for October 31st, 2020, when they arrested me 3 times in one day for no reason. So that's going to trial as well in July. And then I've got the trial of me going to prison for no reason. I mean, that's a pretty big trial as well. That's not in the court system yet. So I honestly think it's a matter of distraction, trying to bleed my resources, my money, things like that. So this consumer affairs thing, the fundraiser was 3.5 years ago. Don't you think 2.5 years ago, if they had the proof then, why didn't they bring it to us a year and a half ago? Why did they wait this long?
So,
I honestly think it's a distraction tactic.
Are you allowed now, have you registered to your Reignite Democracy Australia, RDA, are you now to fund the court cases and what you're going to do? Are you now able to legally ask for money for people to help you?
No, I
yourself?
don't take any donations anymore. Because I got quite a lot when that support has been enough. And I'm also selling my book, and I'm touring, and I'm selling other little knickknacks, and I'm doing fine. So I don't take any donations anymore, and I don't need them. So that's good.
I'm not trying to say you make money out of it, but
but if I wanted to, of course I could legitimately fundraise. Yes, if that was
now
super.
you could, because you could register yourself as a GoFundMe person or something, whatever.
Yes, I would know the rules, I guess. Yeah. But yes, I would be able to.
Well, the book, as I say, I will very much look forward to reading it. It's sold well, I presume.
Oh, look, not really. I mean, look,
really.
What I mean is I'm not on Amazon, so because I don't want to support them. So it's all through my website, and it's a mum and a daughter who's sending them out. So it's all the printer is in Victoria. He printed $20,000 worth of free protest material during that time. Yep. So it's all within Australia. So it's a little bit more shipping and things like that. So it's $29, and then it's about $11 shipping. So it's a little bit more expensive, which is annoying. But the tour is when I'm selling most of the books. So when I go to an event, people
I've
buy
read
the
it,
book.
and I think it's one of the best non-fiction books of the year by an Australian.
Gosh.
And I think I remember when Monica was arrested, because I was following all this. I was following what you did on the steps of Parliament, Sam. I was following what many people were sort of, questioning what was going on, because I thought the lockdowns were insane when they were happening. I couldn't believe they were happening, to be perfectly honest. And I think when you were arrested, it was a real big deal within the freedom movement. And then there was a whole bunch of, basically the whole freedom movement, in a sense, when she was arrested, sort of got behind Monica, because she became, I guess, the kind of the martyr, or the Joan of Arc of the movement, or whatever. And I remember, a lot of people donating to your charity at the time, and because we were just outraged that an Australian would be thrown in jail for a month for basically, and this was around the same time that also Black Lives Matter did a protest, and then Daniel Andrews was out there saying that was okay. Yep. You know what I mean? This was like Monica would be arrested for suggesting you would have a protest about the lockdowns, but then a week later it was okay to have a huge riot over Black Lives Matter.
I did mention that when I was asked, I said, no, I'm not. I said, but I notice Black Lives Matter can wander up and down the streets in thousands and thousands, tipping over garbage cans and throwing paint on things, and no one gives a stuff. You must keep an eye on the pushback that's going on overseas that is suddenly...
France and Germany and these things?
And the United States.
Yeah.
And Anthony Fauci and just what he's been accused of in his...
he's a crook, isn't he?
They are saying he is. So thing, you must gain some support or some confidence that not only you are pushing back on it, but
people are holding up...
starting to push back on it overseas.
People were holding up signs overseas when Monica was in jail, saying "Free Monica" in protests.
Very, very touching.
Anti-lockdown protests in London and in New York and stuff. I saw this on the news myself.
Well, seeing the pushback overseas is very encouraging, because to me it's not really about the movement, but it's about humanity. And I think that when humans are pushed to the edge, just like we were here in Victoria, and that's probably why we have the biggest quote-unquote freedom movement per capita in the world, and maybe Canada, because we were pushed so hard. When you are pushed, it brings out the best in us. Think of our own lives. It's always that way. Do you know the story, Sam, about the ULEZ cameras in London?
The
ULEZ cameras.
No.
Can I tell you the story?
Yes.
So around London, about a 20-kilometre radius, 1,400 cameras were put in place to notice cars that were more than 5 years old. If they crossed that line, they would get charged $20 a day Australian to be in that area, whether you're a courier or you're driving your kids to school, etc. So this is a climate change thing, right? To combat climate change, money to the government makes so much sense. So anyway, these people that now are called Blade Runners, they put masks on and things like that. It's an appropriate time to wear a mask, in my opinion. They went and they've destroyed 1,100 out of the 1,400 cameras, and they keep getting replaced and they keep getting destroyed. And the reason I'm bringing this point up is because those Blade Runners, they're unidentifiable. They're probably of all religions, all races, all ages, and they're like, I don't want to pay $20 a day for my virtue signalling. And I realise that virtue signalling is basically free, but as soon as the government tries to shut us up with it or tries to make us pay for it, you'll find that humans will come together just like they have in France with it's hilarious what they're doing, by the way. So I have again, I'm naive by choice because I want to believe that humans are capable of more than what the mainstream media try to tell us they are. And I see that on the ground. I'm doing 60 events across Australia right now, a 4-month road trip all around Australia in my van. I sleep in my van and stuff. I slept outside here last night. Yeah. So the point is, I see people on the ground, Sam. Online isn't real. We all know that, but sometimes we forget. When I meet these people on the ground, I'm just so encouraged because they're so hopeful and they're so beautiful. And this quote unquote loosely said freedom movement, we're all such regular people. And I know that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but we all do anyway, so let's just admit it. If you're going to judge a book by its cover, when I go to these events, they're just such normal people. They're dressed nicely, they're healthy looking, they've got normal jobs, and I'm just so proud to be a part of this movement because it's absolutely a beautiful community.
But, and you're quite right, we are all law-abiding. We don't want to thumb our nose at the law because if you don't have laws, you don't have a sensible society. But to have to get vaccinated if you didn't want to, and good on Novak Djokovic, but if you didn't want to get vaccinated, but you couldn't go into a supermarket or something to buy something, we were all compelled to do it, even though now they say that drugs never been tested and the vaccine and the side effects and the masks are useless and all that. But you're compelled to do it because you can't operate in a community where the government has such a strong arm tactic on you. You are a classic case that you think you just fold over and say, well, bugger it, I'll do it all, and that is in the end what they want.
But next time, I think people have realised that if everyone had held the line at the same time, it wouldn't have happened. So next time, if they try to bring in a digital ID or a cashless society, which to me is laughable because I don't think it's possible. We don't even have reception halfway across. But anyway, if they try to bring in something like that that's mandatory, if enough people say no, it won't succeed. And I think that's a lesson that we've all learned.
Well, I was going to say, I know you're not considered a pariah because you have great support through all the touring that you do. What about the family? I don't know if you've got any children or you're married or what you are, but how has that affected you personally and the people who are around you?
Well, actually, I'm really glad you said that because I was kind of like trained for this beforehand without realising. I've got no children. I have an extremely supportive family. I still have time to have children, but I think there's a reason why I didn't already. So I've got 4 siblings, 15 nieces and nephews, 4 great nieces and nephews, and all the adults in the family are all the same as me and they're very supportive. And during lockdowns, I was actually living with about 12 family members, like on a big property. Yep. And like I said, they just supported me the whole time. I also was doing the live streaming for my church every Sunday. And whether you're religious or not, I was one of the only Victorians that never missed one Sunday service. And regardless of your belief, that's something magical in my opinion. So I had money in the bank. I had just recently travelled for 3 years alone overseas, and that's when I started doing interviewing and things like that. Learnt a lot about myself, evolved as a human being, learned how to be alone because I was alone for 3 years. That's why isolation wasn't so bad. So it's really weird. I was literally prepped for this. The only courageous thing I would say that I have done is listen to the calling. We all get a calling once or twice in our lives or whatever. You can say no or you can say yes. But if I had said no, I would have been a complete wuss, Sam, because I'd had the dream. I was completely prepped for it. I had nothing to lose. I had no one counting on me like young children. People with children should not be running around getting arrested, obviously. I was like the perfect person groomed for this, basically. So I just did what I was supposed to do. But from a personal perspective, I will also say, I'm obviously not a robot. I'm a human being. I'm a woman. And of course, I do have some PTSD when I see police and things like that. Of course, those things happen. During protesting, I remember once I walked around a corner and I saw all these dressed up in black clothing cops, and I involuntarily wet myself a little bit. And that was involuntary. Like, I have many weaknesses, but one of my skills is mental fortitude. My whole family's like that. We just get on with things, yeah? I've been modelled that. But to involuntarily wet myself, I was like, wow, this is affecting me in ways that I can't actually compute.
Yeah, the stormtroopers are there.
But overall, I was the right person for the job at that time, and I wanted to find purpose in my life because I didn't have children. I asked God for purpose, and bloody hell, He gave it to me. And so in that mission that I was doing at that time, which was trying to give people hope and things like that, going to prison was actually, I couldn't have orchestrated it any better myself. It was the best thing that could have happened to me at that moment in that role, because I was able to network with people like Robert Kennedy Jr., Peter McCullough. People took me a lot more seriously because I had put in my foot where I walked the walk, you know what I mean? So I was so grateful actually for that experience, and I was grateful to make that stand. And now I'm grateful to use that story to showcase other things, and also to use that story to go after them and make a public spectacle of them.
So I've been watching Robert Kennedy Jr., who is trying
Love
to
him.
oppose Dopey Joe.
Dopey Joe,
the son of Robert Kennedy.
Yes.
He's very big on the COVID and the vaccinations. And I know
He was on vaccines before that, but
Yep.
yeah.
And I know Mr. McCullough. I watch a lot of that. It's interesting you say, and this I'm not sure if it happened here, but in the States, I was not going to say the mainstream religions, the
Christian.
Judeo-Christian religions of the Catholics and the Presbyterians and the Anglicans, they weren't allowed to have church service, but I think the mosques just went full steam. I don't think they
I think they're just kind of scared to tell them what to do.
Well,
But
they
we're
knew
so
they wouldn't
nice.
listen.
Exactly my point.
They're not scared of us, Sam. Like
No.
when we protest, we can have 500,000 people there and no rubbish, basically.
Yep.
They know that we're decent people. They've profiled us. They
Yep.
know. But if 10 Nazis turn up, they'll shut everything down.
Yep.
And I don't blame them, by the way. But, they know that we're just good people.
And if Black Lives Matter sympathisers
Black Lives
turn up,
Matter.
no one's game to push back on them in case they're considered xenophobic or racist or whatever, anything that ends in istorism. It's great that Monica, if you can stand the heat, it's great that you're doing
For
this.
now. For now.
For now.
say.
So yeah.
What do you think of someone like Julian Assange, who's kind of, in a sense, kind of suffering on a larger scale what you went through? Because obviously he's kind of a political prisoner, and he's an Aussie as well, obviously.
It's an interesting thing because when I was he's obviously been in prison for so long, and it's like he did something there's so much support for him still to this day. People are protesting for him, doing marches and things like that, and it's just beautiful. But he's still there. He's still there, and life still goes on. It's a very weird concept.
Okay, so Monica Smit, Cell 22. You're going to tell us where you get this, and I'll just read on the back cover. I stripped my soul to the bone. There is nothing left unsaid. I just pray I'll just pray it's not in vain and inspires someone else. So that's very badly read.
Not written.
Very badly, very well written, but I'm going to read that again. So I'm going to make sure
Start again,
show
Sam.
that I'm partially educated.
Take two.
I strip my soul to the bone. There is nothing left unsaid. I just pray it's not in vain and inspires someone. So that's on the back jack cover of the book. And tell us where we get the book, please, and we'll see if we can ramp up some sales
I
beside
appreciate
you.
that.
So where do we get it, and what do we do to get it?
MonicaSmit.com. It's that simple.
Monica Smit, SMIT.com.
Cell 22. And the reason it's Cell 22, I was in Cell 22 for 22 days and I was released on the 22nd and my courtroom was 22.
Oh, I just must ask you about going to jail. Being in solitary confinement. what is that about? How did you handle that? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
was
savage stuff.
Yeah, it sounds bad, but I was in solitary confinement because I wouldn't take a PCR test. That's it. But it was only supposed to be 14 days, and then they stretched it to 22, which I don't think they're allowed to do.
In a cell for 23 hours a day?
I wasn't. No, I wasn't allowed outside once. I didn't go outside once.
Solitary.
There was no window. There was a window, but it didn't open.
That is extraordinary.
I know it is. When I think back on it, it really is extraordinary. But I did okay. I actually fasted for 12 days. I had to pretend I was eating because they said that I was going psychotic. So I pretended to eat because I wanted to fast. In preparation, I wanted to fast to pray for a good judge, and I got a really good judge, so it worked. But then I also would psych out the nurses and stuff. They would check on you 4 times a day, same time every day, and you'd know. And so every time they would come, I would be like doing sit-ups or push-ups or something just to like play with their minds. Like, who is this chick, So to be honest, and I was writing, and so I was actually completely fine, honestly. I mean, maybe I'd have a better case if I was a blubbering mess, but
and you were able to
I was
reflect
fine.
upon your whole life, and
Well, I
which
wrote
you've recorded in this book, correct?
I wrote 202 pages by hand, and these days no one writes, so it was really good practice for me. And I'm obviously not the audience of my book, but Richard, you've read it.
Yep.
Do you think that statement on the back is that am I over dramatizing the stripped my soul thing, or do you think?
read it out, Dick. You read it out.
Sure, mate.
Because I had two
I
goes
stripped
at
my
it.
soul to the bone. There is nothing left unsaid. I just pray it is not in vain and inspires someone. I think this book is incredibly inspiring, written by a very brave young Australian, Monica, who really, took it on the chin, and went to prison to kind of defy dictator Dan Andrews during the world's longest lockdown. Remember that people in Victoria here in Melbourne went for the world's longest lockdown. I'm sure we all remember those times. And this is an incredible book, I think, incredibly brave, and it tells you all about Monica's life, and it's quite interesting. There's a lot more to Monica's life than we've discussed on this show, and I think it's a really fascinating book, and it also mentions many other people from the freedom movement like Topher Field and Morgan Jonas and stuff, so it's really worth getting this book, and I can't recommend it highly enough.
Well, that's the best close to the interview. They couldn't do it better. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thanks, Sam.